All right, everyone. Hello, welcome. I think we're about ready to get started with the next session. So welcome, everyone. My name is Ben. I am the Senior Community Manager for Lenovo Legion for Lenovo, for our gaming and education communities globally. And I work with Lenovo Pro as well. Good morning. Just to recap, I'm here from Lenovo from America, actually, first time in Japan. Everyone liking the conference? Thank you. It's very cool so far. And I'm here on behalf of our community team. I work with Mari over here for the Japan side. I work for sort of the English-speaking communities globally, but also for our education, gaming, and small, medium business communities. So I'm here today to talk about live streaming. I was thinking about this opportunity and what made the most sense to talk about for the group. And so rather than just talk about our products for half an hour, I thought I would try to have something like a useful skill that we do that I use a lot in Lenovo to try to apply that to digital nomad lifestyle, basically. So I currently, for Lenovo, I host live streams on behalf of the gaming community twice a week on the official Lenovo channels for Twitch, YouTube. We work with Instagram, TikTok, all sorts of social platforms. And I think it's a very valuable skill to have, to learn how to live stream. I've done a lot of things with live streaming over the course of my career, both at Lenovo and before Lenovo. And so this is meant to be sort of an interactive workshop where you can ask questions if you are interested in live streaming. Anytime during the presentation, you can definitely raise your hand if you have a question on anything. But hopefully this will kind of give you a sense of what you need to get started with live streaming, whether it's right for you and what you need to think about when you're getting into it. So, sound good? Let's do it. Go ahead. Okay, so some of the things we'll talk about today are kind of in 6 main buckets. To get the basics of live streaming and learning whether it is for you. The first is understanding why it's valuable and why it's different from other types of content out there, like media, photo, video, things like that. The content pipeline system, that's my own little term, which is how to get more out of your live streams and do many things at once with a single live stream, which I'm very excited about. Retention versus discovery. This is sort of about understanding the purpose of the live stream, if you're doing other types of content, how it fits into that as well. Tech considerations. Obviously, with a live stream, there can be a lot of tech involved. We actually tried to get this one live stream, but some of the tech stuff was challenging. So we're recording it, but audio, video, camera, lighting, stuff like that we'll talk about in that section. Real world examples with Lenovo. These are things that I've done with the Lenovo community over the past couple of years for different types of formats to give you ideas of things you can try with live streams. And then lastly, fit for you. So you can kind of make a decision as to whether you think it's a good fit for what you're doing as a nomad, business, creator, or any of that. So go ahead, Mari. So first of all, a little bit about me. I have been at Lenovo for about 4 years now. And prior to that, I was in the gaming startup space. I have been doing live streaming since 2015, so for almost 10 years on platforms like Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X, and more than I'm forgetting probably over the course of that time. I've hosted multiple podcasts on streaming industry advice for people who want to get into live streaming on how to they could ask questions, we answer that thing. So this is kind of an extension of doing that basically. I am the manager of the Legion gaming community, but I also work with our, again, Lenovo EDU community and our Lenovo Pro community and kind of the resident point for live streams in those communities. I've done official Lenovo events, which you can see some over here, and we'll talk about a little more later today, both in-person live events as well as online with creators, brands, ourselves, products, all sorts of things that we'll get into. I do work with creators a lot, in the gaming space especially, so creators of all sizes, whether you're just getting started, sort of micro-influencers, all the way up to sort of the top names that we work with Intel, Microsoft, for some of the big sponsorships. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. And then my own personal journey. I'm just a big fan of the format of live streaming, and so that's why I'm really passionate about talking about it, which I think is important to it. So go ahead to the next one here. Okay, so getting into sort of understanding the pros and cons of live streaming. This is important because it's different than a lot of other types of media, where if you're doing a post on LinkedIn with a video or an article or a photo, usually you have a lot of time to edit it and put it together and make it look really nice. With live streams, it's doing it live, so things are a little more on the fly and things can and will go wrong, and that's okay. That's kind of the fun of live streaming, is knowing that you have that direct connection. It kind of takes down the wall between you and your community, and they can kind of more authentically engage with you. So the pros of that are that it is really authentic. Usually it's tied to an event of some kind, so you have that sort of excitement around the event. And it's kind of rare because everyone's doing videos and photos and things, but live streams are still kind of hard to find most of the time. So it can help you stand out in that case if you are doing a live stream. The rest of it, as I said, things will go wrong. You'll have a microphone break, a laptop won't work, the camera will break, something will happen, and you'll have to learn how to sort of adapt to that on the fly and be able to do that. But again, that's sort of the magic of it if you're okay with that, just knowing not to panic when it happens and practicing over time, essentially. Nerves or bad fit, I have as a category here. This just means, just like any other medium, it takes time to get used to, kind of even like this, doing public speaking. It can be something you can be nervous about at first, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you get at it. But also, I think sort of live streaming and public speaking both have a thing where it's certain people are drawn to it. And I think that's something you can look inside yourself and see if that feels like something that excites you. So definitely consider that as you're looking into live streaming. And then the live streaming, it can be easy. With live streaming, they work the best if you have some sort of event planned. You may have seen a lot of live streams where someone's kind of just doing their own thing and it's not that engaging because there's not a lot of thought in it. So generally, like, you want to put a lot of thought into the live stream if you can to make it the most successful afterwards. And again, if you have any questions throughout this, feel free to stop me. I think probably as we get into it, there'll be more coming up here. Slide here. Okay. So this is the first thing I want to talk about as why live streams are so valuable, in my opinion, is because they are sort of what I call a core content type. So you can take one live stream, let's say you're doing a podcast, for example, a live podcast for about an hour or two. You can take that single live stream and turn it into a lot more content. So you have the recording of the live stream after you've done it. You can then take that live stream and turn it into a podcast audio, right? Put it on Spotify, Apple Music, anything like that, SoundCloud. You can also turn it into a long form video on things like YouTube, so that you have now 3 different types of content from doing one live stream. And even from that, you can do things like TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts for clips of that live stream or podcast to get more out of that. So it's very efficient if you use a live stream and then repurpose that content. You can get 10 to 20 pieces of content out of a single live stream if you do it right, which is very beneficial. And it's very important too. It's easy sometimes when you do live streams to not do those things, but if you don't, then you lose a lot of the value from that single live stream. It makes them more impactful if you take that approach. So I'm very passionate about this idea. And it's constantly changing, right? Because there's so many new social media platforms constantly, threads, things like that you can be posting new things on, all from a single live stream. And more platforms are supporting live streaming now as an option. So that also helps there. Go ahead here. Okay, this is a pretty important topic. So this is sort of understanding the purpose of live streaming and how they vary by platform. Because as I said, a lot of these platforms support live streaming, but they all sort of handle it differently. And I'll show you sort of what I mean. So on this sort of line chart we have here at the bottom, if you think about how you see live streams on different social platforms, they're often shown to you differently. So on TikTok, you might just be scrolling through your For You page and a live stream will pop up from someone you've never heard of before. And so that can be a good way to be found if you're looking for a new audience, right? That has not yet seen you before. Whereas if you're on Instagram, that doesn't happen. You pretty much only see live streams if you follow the person already, and then you'll see their story kind of at the top of the feed. So you have to understand sort of what your goal is with the live stream. If you already have an existing audience and you want to kind of connect with them deeply and form a really strong engagement, then somewhere like Instagram or YouTube might be very good for you because you already have that following. They'll see you live at the top of the feed, and that's a good way to kind of get engaged. But if you don't have an audience and you want to build an audience, then Instagram is a bad choice because no one's going to see your live stream when you go live on Instagram. Whereas on TikTok, your stream can be shown to new people very quickly, and so it's a good way to get in front of people very efficiently. So it's just important to understand that, and you can use multiple social media platforms, which I highly recommend for live streaming. You can even stream to multiple at once, which is a bit more involved, but it is pretty fun to try if you've never done it. So just think about what's important to you at your point in your journey, whether you're a nomad, creator, or business, and think about which of these platforms makes sense to you to start. I generally recommend starting with one platform just to make things easy as like your core live streaming platform. But you can definitely experiment with different types and see which one works and feels best for you over time. Awesome. Any questions on this? It's a bit of a first time I've shown this.
What's the audience that you usually get during your live stream?
Yeah, so for Lenovo, since Lenovo's a pretty known brand already, we get a lot of people who are fans of Legion and Lenovo coming in. My core platform that I use is Twitch in the middle, just because it's very tied into gaming for our gaming audience with Legion. But we've experimented with TikTok, YouTube, Instagram as well. So in our case, it's a lot of people who already know Lenovo, but we do also use TikTok sometimes to grow the following to new audience as well. It just sort of depends on what the campaign is and what's important at that time.
How many numbers?
How many members? Like concurrent viewers and things like that? Yeah, so for Twitch, typically what I'll do during my weekly things is YouTube and Twitch at the same time. And it's usually a couple hundred to a couple thousand people at a time watching. And a bit nerdy, but in live streaming, concurrent viewers is usually the most important number because that's what moves you up in the directory. So that's sort of where we're at with Lenovo. We do also post, we'll take those live streams, right, like I said earlier, and post highlights onto TikTok and YouTube and Instagram as well. So, yeah. Yeah?
How do you choose your topics and how do you know which topics are successful?
Yes, it is. So I'll talk about that in a little bit in the next slide, but I will say quickly, definitely experiment. I mean, I'm a big believer that you won't really know what your thing is until you've tried it, right? Like you can make this big plan in your head, but until you've actually got out there and started making the content, you don't know how it's going to be received. So it's a combination of that and also what you enjoy, because you have to be able to stick to it long term to make sure that it's something that you feel like you can make a year or two worth of content and still not be burnt out of it, essentially. Awesome. Go ahead, next one, I guess. Okay. So tech considerations. This gets into a bit of the specifics of live streaming, right? And this can oftentimes be the thing that's complicated for people and is overwhelming maybe. But live streaming is kind of cool because you can start really simple or get really complicated and find wherever fits you in that matrix, basically. So on the very simple end, really just your phone is all you actually need to start live streaming, whether you're on especially Instagram, TikTok, but even other platforms now are supporting just direct phone streaming. So you can just use your built-in camera, your built-in mic, some lighting you have in the room basically, and just do a simple talk to the audience thing. Again, that's sort of the way to get into it. And I think it's actually a good way to start live streaming without buying a bunch of expensive stuff that's gonna be a lot to learn, right? But in each of these categories, we'll talk about some suggestions. And I mentioned Lenovo can help with some of these things because we do make computers and also headphones and microphones and things like that too. So we can touch on that. So on the system side, basically, you either need a phone or a PC. And again, I'd start with a phone. You can move from there to laptop if you think that it's worth doing, all the way up to like a desktop computer, which is what I use for Legion because it's very tied into gaming. But really, like a phone or a laptop is the essential. That's the thing that's just powering your stream, right? That's the thing that's going to be sending out to social media platforms. Or if you want to use a software, which is our next category here, you can use things like Open Broadcast Studio, which is OBS, or other things like Streamlabs Studio, the softwares that are kind of meant to handle live streaming, although a lot of the social platforms will have built-in streaming as well. So that might be your easiest way to get started. On the audio side and video, really both of these are the same thing. Either you can use your built-in devices with your phone, which are getting better and better these days actually. Like the cameras on your phone are pretty amazing now. Even the microphones are good. You can also have external microphone and audio. So that can be things like USB microphones or webcams, all the way up to like this type of mic, XLR mic, or a mirrorless camera, DJI Osmo, things like that can give you that higher quality. My general tip for this thing though is start simple with your gear because it's very, if you look online, it's very easy to get down the rabbit hole of I need this $2,000 camera and I need this $4,000 microphone or something to get started. And really, the important thing is that expensive gear will not make you a good live streamer or creator of any kind, right? Like if you've done video before, if you've done photo, you know that having the best camera doesn't mean that you're the best photographer all of a sudden. It's more about how you learn how to use the thing and get better over time. So I definitely encourage you to start small. And then once you see the value, you can invest in that based on things that are most important. And I will tell you, fun tip on this, usually audio is more important than video when it comes to streaming. You can get by usually with your phone camera for a pretty long time, but the jump from your built-in microphone to a microphone like this will be very dramatic for people. And generally, when you poll the live streaming space, live stream viewers are more picky about the audio quality than the video quality. So I would invest in a microphone first if you have to pick one or the other. And lastly, lighting. Lighting sometimes gets overlooked because it's not as techy sort of as the other categories, but it's actually very important. And with lighting, you can get pretty creative, whether you want to use natural light or use a dedicated sort of softbox situation. If you're traveling a lot, lighting can be tricky because sometimes it's hard to fit in with you if it's a big system. But there are small sort of like key lights you can bring with LED panels that are pretty good usually. And learning how to get a basic lighting setup will make you stand out a lot more than just the simple kind of point at your face to the camera, which I highly recommend. Awesome. Any questions on the gear side? And we have some examples of stuff in the back too, I think, with our Lenovo catalog. If you want to see recommendations for some of like our yoga devices or Legion, that stuff's really good for live streaming in particular. Awesome. Go ahead. Okay, so this is some of the content types that I've done in the past that I want to show as sort of an example of ideas you can look at for live streaming. And these are just 6 ideas. There's a lot more out here. These just sort of tied into what we've done for Lenovo specifically over the past couple of years. So the top left here is creator collaborations. This is often working with influencers and creators on other platforms and doing sort of like a collab session with them. That could be an interview, it could be a gameplay session, it could be a challenge of some kind. But the idea is that you sort of merge the audiences together and you help each other grow in that way, right? So from a brand perspective, it's helpful because you're helping connect the brand to creators. But even if you're a creator, just collabing with other creators is a really good way to grow your audience quickly. And it gives you an easy content type because it's an event basically that your community can come out and see. So that is always very popular. The middle here is what I call just chatting, if you're familiar with Twitch or IRL streaming. This is sort of what I talked about earlier, where it's very simple. There's not a lot of a plan to it. It's more of, I'm just going to show up at this time and talk to my community. You guys can come on and ask questions. If you have a large following, this works very well because people, if you have enough people following you, they will just ask questions and your content is already kind of there. You can just show up and answer questions. But if you're new, I don't always recommend this because sometimes you turn on the live stream and nothing happens. And then you're kind of waiting for someone to come ask you a question, which is not the best spot to be in. So just, I would say work this one in occasionally, not all the time. It's a good way to connect with the audience and grow the audience, but the events will work better for you most of the time. The top right here is what I do a lot of in Lenovo specifically, because we are a brand, and that is product showcase or selling. So this also is things you might have seen like TikTok shopping, I think even Instagram is doing shopping too. That's the idea of basically showing a product live and talking about features with the intent to kind of market the product to people or show some exclusive experience. And it works pretty well for us for Lenovo. I'll do a lot of live like game testing, for example, for new games in the case of gaming laptops. But I'm sure you've seen like live beauty showcases for products. There's all sorts of things on TikTok now, but especially gear for creators and things. That's definitely an option for you as well. The bottom left here is live hybrid events. So if you are going to events, even like Fukuoka actually, you could live stream that and have the combination of talking to people in person and actually online, which is what we were hoping to do with this event, but it's all right, we're gonna record it anyway. And this is a really cool way to have both in-person and online stuff at the same time, and to encourage people who are watching online to meet you in person, but those who can't attend can still be part of the event too, which is very cool. The middle here is one of my favorites. This is podcasts. Podcasts are especially good for live streaming because it's a very natural format to bring to a live stream, especially if you're already doing a live stream. So you can take that and put it onto live streaming websites. And like I said earlier, with that sort of flowchart, it then goes on to Spotify and Apple Music and all these other audio platforms, as well as turning into YouTube videos and TikToks and Reels and things like that. So it's a really good content type if you're looking for an idea to get a lot of value out of and get a lot of breadth basically across many different platforms, which is helpful. And lastly here, for another thing that we do a lot of in Legion is gaming/commentary. In our case, we do a lot of live gaming events with our community. People can come out and play games with us or with creators again and do some special game days. We could also be commentary on things like sports events or just sort of live event that you're giving your thoughts on, right? Even like reaction content kind of goes into this category of having some sort of live engagement with the audience. So that's a good opportunity for you. Any questions on these topics? Again, this is just sort of 6 that I came up with. There's a lot more, and I definitely encourage you to kind of experiment with different options and see which one makes the most sense for you. Awesome. Okay, so is live streaming right for you? That's the big question out of this. And these are things you want to think before you get into live streaming, or even as you're on the journey, as you continue that to kind of take yourself to the next level. First thing is, how established are you? So this goes into, again, how you choose your platform. If you already have a large following, then live streaming is nice because you can reach out to that following very quickly. And if you're on places like Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, they'll see your live stream and come out and automatically watch you. However, if you are new, if you don't have a following, you're looking to grow a following, then live streaming is not always the best option for you. Definitely places like TikTok worth trying because they'll put you in front of new people. But you may have a better time with doing things like dedicated reels and TikToks and even podcasts to get yourself more discovered. Whereas, because live streaming is not primarily a discovery platform, it's more of an engagement platform to be able to more deeply connect with your existing audience. What is your niche/genre? So this kind of goes into the question earlier. It really just takes some time of trying different things out. I strongly believe with any content creation that you don't really know exactly where your niche is going to be until you just try things. And that can be whether on YouTube or TikTok or anything, with any type of content. So I would say experiment over time. And if you are a gaming live streamer in particular, same kind of thing, don't get tied into a specific game, definitely try different options for you. And ultimately try to stick to the same thing that you are passionate about. Because the most important thing is to stick to it long term. So you give yourself enough time to test it, essentially. Does it excite you? Again, this goes into what I talked about earlier as well. Personally, I just love the format of live streaming the most. I know that things like TikTok are really popular, but I just really love the platform of live streaming, right? So I think that's important to you. And it really, of any content type you want to try, like maybe podcasting is very exciting to you. Maybe making videos is your thing. I think finding the thing that excites you the most is important so that, again, you can stay committed to it and you'll probably make better content at the end of the day. Can you start with your gear? So look at what you have, right? And is it enough to kind of start a live stream? Probably yes, in most cases. If you have a smartphone, you can probably try a live stream. But it definitely helps if you have things like a USB mic or a camera of some kind you can try to level up your content quality a little bit as well. What are your content goals? Again, where are you trying to go with the content? Do you want to primarily be a live streamer, or is live streaming kind of a component of what you're doing that's going to help something else? Like, what is your goal, basically? What's the most important thing to you? Definitely understanding that is important to figure out where live streaming fits into that goal, essentially. And then, can you commit to it? Again, with live streaming or any type of content, it really takes, I would say, at least a year to really get the full feel of it. You can try it a few times, but it's important to stick to anything you do long-term with content to see the payoff of it. So make sure that if you want to start it, that you're committed to really trying and giving a fair take, basically, to see if it's going to pay off. Awesome. Okay, so at this point, I have time for questions, and I actually have some questions for our community as well on Lenovo, which I'll take a couple of those as well. So first of all, in the audience, though, any questions on the live streaming, since this is a workshop? If you've done live stream before or not, love to hear.
I've got the travel community, and I just have very few followers when I live stream. They're working for me, so I'm doing more, but it's just a waste of time.
Right. Yeah, and that's the challenge, right? I think it's easy to do. What kind of live streams do you typically do when you're doing them?
Like walk through cities, chatting a bit about where I am or stuff like that.
Okay. And what platforms do you typically live stream on? Instagram?
It's very handy.
Yeah, it is handy, I agree. Instagram is a little frustrating to me, to be honest, because I like the platform, but their live streaming system is not the best unless you already have a large following, right? So I actually think if you tried TikTok, it would work very well if you're open to TikTok. I've seen a lot of live stream people just touring the city on there, and the viewership is pretty impressive. So I definitely think you'd get some good reception there if you wanted to try it.
It's difficult on TikTok, it's bad.
Yes, I understand. Yeah, well, and it doesn't have to be TikTok either, but other platforms, even like Twitch, would be better, I think, because they have certain categories for that where people can find you. Yeah, the challenge with Instagram is, if you think about Instagram, if you've been on it recently, when's the last time you saw a live stream? Exactly. That's so you have to think about where you're going and how people find you, essentially. It's important. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you expand a little bit more about live podcasting and what kind of platforms you...
Yeah, absolutely. So for live podcasting, typically the way I've done it in the past is you'll just use a live streaming platform as the core to get the first version of it done with a live audience, right? So in my case, it's been Twitch and YouTube. You could use TikTok probably, or any platform like that, and sort of arrange it that way. Yeah, YouTube's really easy because you actually just turn the video into a video right away after the live stream. And then from there, you can download the audio and send it to a podcast platform for things like Spotify, Apple, things like that. And I think it's very successful, actually. It can be difficult to work in a live audience for a podcast if you're not used to that, because you don't want to break up the conversation flow. But I think it's actually very engaging once you figure that out, and it helps you have content to talk about too, because they're asking questions as you do.
So what is the benefit of doing it live versus just
Yeah.
what is the benefit of doing it live?
Sure. What's the benefit of doing it live? Yeah. I think a couple things. First of all, just by having it live, you're adding one more way people can find you, one way to monetize that live podcast, even if you don't engage with the chat at all. I mean, think about like radio shows, right? That's basically what's happening. They don't really usually have the listeners engaging, but they still are broadcasting it out. People can watch it live. So at the minimum, it's one more way to get yourself out there and monetize and engage. But if you do choose to engage the live viewers as well, then I think it makes it a little more interactive in a way, because even if it's just like a section at the end of the podcast where you have some questions from people, then they know that they can come out to sort of be part of the podcast, right? And they hear their names on air, and then people who even watch it after the fact, if they hear, here's a question from the live viewers on so-and-so, they might come out to your next live stream for that too. So I think it's a nice sort of full loop in that way to create that live experience as well. Awesome. Okay, I'll pull in a couple more questions as well from the community, if that's okay, from Lenovo. There was one from Richie Solomon, who's one of our super users in all the Lenovo communities, who asked, with so many streaming platforms available, how do you choose the one that's best for your content? Are there certain platforms where specific types of content perform better? So yeah, this kind of goes in, first of all, to understanding which platform will promote you the most. And again, whether you want your existing followers or new followers. But also content type matters too. So if you're doing gaming content, Twitch is probably a better fit for you than other platforms. Whereas if you're doing things like beauty content, Instagram might be a better fit in that sense too. So there is some sort of specificness around that. Even X is really interesting if you're into like the cryptocurrency side of things. I think X does very well. So definitely think about that a little bit. But generally, it's more, I'd say, about picking a platform for the reach sort of versus the content type. Because a lot of the platforms at this point will push all the content. It's just knowing which content to push, essentially. Good question from Richie. I'll take one more from our community here as well, which is from Trent as well. He said, I'm trying to pick one of these from him. So he said, can you grow by just live streaming, or do you also need to post edited videos? Which is a really good question if you're into live streaming at all. It can be hard to grow a live stream on any platform if you're just live streaming, right? I think of it more as you want to grow a brand, and live streaming is one tool in your tool bag of growing the brand. So generally, a lot of the creators that you'll see grow on live stream platforms in the last year or two, whether it's Twitch or TikTok or anything, they are also posting content on TikTok and Reels and Instagram and things like that. So I think it is important that you can grow just by live streaming. There are definitely cases of people who have done that, but I think it's slow to do it that way versus also using the content, like I showed in that pipeline earlier, and repurposing it for other platforms at the same time. So I highly encourage that. And there are actually some really cool AI tools that will do it for you now, where if you have a podcast or a gameplay session from a live stream, you can just take that live stream and put it into the tool, and it will automatically create like 5 to 10 to 20 different clips for you for things like TikTok and Reels and YouTube. Yeah, so there's different options. If you do podcasts, there's one called Opus Clip, which is really good. Yeah, you know it as well. More for like the talking head types of videos. If you're into gameplay stuff, I don't know if you those gameplay things, there's a couple tools called sizzle.gg and eclipse.gg that will like look at your gameplay and find highlights for you to turn into vertical video. So that's just a couple that I know. There are 3. There's a new AI tool like every week nowadays. So there's probably more out there for different types of categories too. It really is a huge time saver for you though, because live streaming can be a time sink, right? And I understand that. So if you're also trying to edit videos on top of that, it adds up very quickly. So I think the AI stuff is worth looking into, for short form especially. Awesome. Any other questions? Last call here. All right, well, a couple things really quickly. We have a QR code up here for the Lenovo Pro community, which is one of our 3 Lenovo communities that Mari helps run. And I thought this was the best fit for nomads because it's a community for all kinds of businesses and creators globally. So I definitely encourage you, if you are making content, to check this community out. You are free to post any of your content on the platform. It's a very good way to network, kind of similar to LinkedIn, and meet new people globally and to grow your following, or to find advice for growing a brand, whether you're in Japan or America or anywhere else. So I wanted to point that out. And secondly, we have a couple of Lenovo products around here as well, and we'll be here hanging out for a little bit after the talk. If you want to talk to Mari and I, and you are creating anything, we'd love to talk to you. And if you have any questions about gear you need for live streaming or anything, I'm happy to help you with that for Lenovo and Lenovo, non-Lenovo brand gear. Yeah. Oh, and we also have this cool little Legion Go here too, if you've seen that, which is sort of our handheld gaming device, which you're free to check out for a little bit after the fact too. We've got some games on there just to show it off. So awesome. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time.